There's so many people that love to say it's overhyped. And I thought that was actually the opposite. It's underhyped. Oh gosh, anyone can write content now. What's my place in the world? If my AI could get up in the morning, I want to clone myself. I was so intrigued with this robotic arm. We don't know what's real and what's fake. You have no idea that you're not talking to your loved one.
This episode is brought to you by Impekable, your trusted partner for building AI-powered customer experiences. Whether you're fighting fraud with Twilio or launching new products with OpenAI and Google Cloud, our team helps you move fast from prototype to production. Learn more at impeccable.com. Now let's get into today's conversation with Emmy-winning journalist Lindsey Mastis on AI, scams, and digital trust. Today on the Impekable Minds podcast, I'm thrilled to welcome Lindsey Mastis. Lindsey spent 2 decades in television news, earning 4 Emmy Awards and an Edward R. Murrow Award along the way. Now an independent journalist, keynote speaker, and media consultant, she keeps her lens squarely on AI and emerging technology, covering everything from generative video, synthetic voices, to the future of self-driving cars and AI-driven newsrooms. Notably, she's recognized as the first local news anchor in the United States to cover artificial intelligence as her official beat. You may have seen her nationally syndicated segments on AI breakthroughs or her hard-hitting series on online scams. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Pek. I appreciate it.
All right. First question, what AI-enabled online scams, what's the worst that stands out that we should be wary of?
What I'm most worried about is what's coming. There's plenty of online scams that I've covered and they're awful. But because of AI technology and because of how accessible these AI tools now are to the bad people, that it's going to be much harder to even know that someone's targeting you. That's what I worry about. A lot of the victims that I've talked to that have unfortunately, in some cases, lost tens of thousands of dollars, they don't know in the moment that they're under attack. So when it comes to these incredible tools that can do so many good things, when people are using them for nefarious purposes, it puts a lot of people at a disadvantage. That's why I'm optimistic about AI, because even these tools are being used by people who shouldn't be using them. We also have so many people in this space now trying to develop AI tools that can combat those situations, including what I'm hoping to see a lot more of, and having it implemented more at like, for example, if you're going to have a spam come through your phone, it might be implemented through your phone company so that spam call never gets through, or the scam call would never get through. Right now we have phones that'll say spam risk. Spam and scams are 2 totally different things. Someone can be a spammer and there may be nothing illegal about that. It's just they're kind of spammy. They want you to order something, whatever, telemarketing. There's a lot of legal telemarketing. That's fine. But when it comes to the scammer is trying to sell you something that doesn't exist, or get your information, get you to reveal enough about yourself that they might take that information and then scam someone else. But what if those calls didn't come through to begin with? That's the potential could be in the future on the good side. On the bad side, I'm seeing a lot more people that are getting much better with these tools. As the tools get better, they're getting better with them. We have to remember, some people know this and a lot of people don't. But a lot of scammers, we think about someone just sitting at home and scamming you. That's real. That happens. But we also see teams of people that are hired to be scammers that are working together and have different specialties. So you have someone who is specialized in a specific AI tool, even a voice cloning tool, for example. They get someone on the phone and they're like, okay, we think this particular type of scam is going to work on them. Let's bring in our AI voice expert. We're going to do XYZ. And you have no idea that you're not talking to your loved one, or you may have no idea that the person that you think you're on the phone with that sounds totally legit is actually 5 people sitting around a table and working together to try to extract as much money and information from you as possible. It's very disheartening. And sadly, a lot of people that are victimized never report it. It has to do with the psychological factor, with shame, with being embarrassed, thinking they might get in trouble themselves. They might feel that they would get in trouble with their families. They're elderly. They don't want their kids to find out because they're worried that it could result in no more freedom. They might have more oversight from their adult children. Or in some cases, the scammers will convince you that there are consequences for what just happened, and you're the one who would be in trouble. So then you're not going to report it. So all these things are happening. And when I talk about scams, it's hard to talk about it in an overview because there's so many different types of scams and there's so many different types of ways these scammers are utilizing the tools to their benefit. What I want to see are more opportunities for AI companies and these brilliant minds in the AI space to come up with these solutions that people never even have to think about the attack because they won't be attacked. So, they'll be like a shield.
Almost like a McAfee virus scan for AI generated attacks or AI involved attacks.
Yeah, I was able to meet with them at CES, and they're focusing on misinformation, disinformation, and other types of phishing attacks. And they have software that will give you a warning. You can override those warnings because maybe it's not 100%. This is really suspicious or not. It'll let you know, hey, it's suspicious. Be careful about opening this email, or this is a video that is actually a deepfake, that type of thing. The technology is being developed. It's implemented to a degree, but I'm seeing a lot of that implementation have to be on the part of the consumer. And if I have to think about it, there's a high likelihood that I either forget, or maybe I never get the software installed, or I don't install it correctly, or I didn't update it properly. We really need to get to the point where I don't have to think about it. I'm just protected without me having to do anything. Unfortunately, that's how it has to be. And I've seen so many people see spam risk on their phone and they answer it anyway, right? We need to just prevent it from coming through to begin with.
On the AI generated content side, there should be regulation to say this is AI generated content. It's so very realistic. And when people say, oh, I can tell the fingers, the eyes, look at the background, I always say this is the worst it'll be ever. It's just
Right.
getting better and better. Just look at mid-journey generations, the same prompt, the span of 2 years, it's night and day, and it's getting better and better. The worst it'll be today, and it's just going to get better. So I think it's going to be really hard to tell.
It'll be hard to tell. But in terms of labeling, ethically, it'd be great if we could get everyone to label it. But scammers are not going to label it. People who are teams that might be interested in spreading disinformation, they're not going to label it. It's going to end up being where we do have to question. But we might have this era that we go through where we don't know what's real and we don't know what's fake. And we either question everything or we decide, what are you going to do? I'll believe everything. Or we might even find ourselves believing wrong thing and questioning the thing that's real. But I think it's going to get sorted out. We're going to end up having these detection tools, and we'll also realize that people are not appreciative of being served images and information that's not accurate. People still want accurate information. They want it in an easy, digestible way. If there's not a market for it, then then by default, if you're spending a lot of time creating a fake image and nobody's engaging with it, then what's the incentive? We can have tons of fun. That's called entertainment, and that's fine. We all need entertainment in our lives, a little bit of make believe as adults. But if I constantly have to question whether a news item is real, I'm probably not going to go to that source anymore. And how's that source going to continue to feed me that information if I'm not willing to look at it? But that's going to take time.
Let's switch to a positive note. Any cool or impressive applications of the AI that you're like, hey, this is so great?
I'm always impressed by robots. I do not have a robot in my home that walks or talks, but a lot of the events that I'm able to go to, when I see the robotic, especially infused robotics, I am so fascinated by it. I'm fascinated about what it might do in the future. So earlier this year, I had a chance to get on top of a robotic dog. like stand on it. I got down and I'm like, okay, I'm going to stand on this. I, put my 2 feet on it, and they made sure I was holding someone's hand because I don't know if it's going to come up steady. I don't know if it's going to go sideways. I don't know what's about to happen. I've never ridden on a robotic dog before. And it just lifted me up. I know I look very tall, in a webcam, but I'm 5'2". So even just a foot off the ground for me is such a different perspective. I could see so much more. I could see so many more people in the venue. I could kind of see over other booths. And you know what? I could totally see this type of technology being important to someone who does field work. And they were talking about how this would be great for an inspections type of tool. Yeah, you could actually get up on this, use it almost like a stool, and get a bigger view of what's going on, or get a different perspective on something that you might be checking out. I thought that was really fascinating. Some of the robotics that I'm looking at has more to do with what I'm seeing being developed for people with disabilities. And I'm going to tell you a quick story. Early on as a journalist, when I first went to college, I was given the library beat. So I covered the library in college. Okay, you get 3 schools or 3 things that you're supposed to cover when first starting out. And this was for newspaper. This wasn't for TV at the time. Well, I was really interested in what the library had. And they had some amazing things. They had death masks. They had the Red Baron's death photo, like weird, amazing, like what is this doing in this library in Southern Illinois kind of things. But they also had this interesting program about technology that was being developed for students with disabilities. And my college had a really great program for students. And one of my best friends, my freshman year, he was paralyzed from the chest down. So it was neat to see what technology was working for him and what technology was coming. Some of this technology had to do with just turning your screen a different color. Like now we have dark mode, but we didn't have that 25 years ago. And there was a program that would not only make the screen dark and the text white, it would make the text a different color. It might be yellow on a dark blue screen. It's something that would make the contrast in a way that if you had issues with vision, it would be so much easier to read. And now you and I use that. We use dark mode all the time because it's easier on our eyes. So when I'm seeing robotic technology that's being developed, for example, like psionic, where they're developing arms, and not only are they doing it for humans, but they're also doing it for robots. And I was so intrigued with this robotic arm. I was doing an interview with the founder, and it was so fascinating to me is how easy it seemed to work. So I'm standing there and he's explaining how it works. And he goes, you know what? I can bring up this app on my phone and you can actually move the fingers by putting the phone up. And it was like he'd had the camera app open. It wasn't the camera app, it was their app, but it's like the camera app. And I could move my fingers. And the thing is, he meant to open up and pair it with the arm he had in his hand, but he accidentally paired it to the arm to someone else in his company. And that person needed the arm. And next thing you know, I'm moving his fingers, and I was like, oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to like move your hand. He's like, no, it's okay. I'm used to it. But it was so incredible because it was a different way to interact with this type of technology. And when I always think back to like when I was in college, and that technology that I saw being developed for a very specific purpose was all of a sudden brought into like this mass market, and everybody was benefiting from it. So that's what I like to look at when it comes to AI and robotics. What is created for one purpose that end up changing the game for all of us?
It might be the same company. I see a news showcasing a young lady with a missing arm and a prosthetic, and she was remotely controlling. Her arm was on the table, and with her mind, remotely control this prosthetic robotic arm.
It's incredible. I keep telling people I feel really privileged to be living through this moment in time. And as somebody who's been passionate about news almost my whole life, you learn about history and big news events. And I remember growing up thinking, oh, if only I could have lived during this time or that time, and I would have gotten to see the Industrial Revolution. That would have been so neat. But in reality, during the Industrial Revolution, there was a lot of fear, a lot of concern, a lot of health issues, that type of thing. And we're seeing some of that now, a lot of fear over this technology. We are seeing factions of people using it for nefarious purposes, But when I go into a lot of areas where I'm talking to developers or teams, founders, just people with with ideas of what to create with AI or what they might be able to contribute, there is such a positivity and a mission focused goal to solve the world's problems. I've really not come across anyone that says, I can't wait to make AI to take over the world and XYZ. No, everyone is telling me personal stories. They say, oh, my grandma has dementia and I'm creating this particular product with her in mind, or my mom went through a health scare and I think if this existed, it would have helped her and it could help so many other people. That's what I'm seeing. People wanting to be the helpers in this society in this moment in time.
What's one thing leaders and consumers get wrong about AI? What's a wrong assumption?
Oh, it's such an individual thing. When I find someone who's afraid of it, if it's mostly just fear, I like to ask them specifically what their fears are. And a lot of times their fears are real. They're worried that it's going to take their jobs, or they're worried about, about losing that ability to, in a human way, explain something that's going on and have another human understand you. Like if you get in trouble, let's say, like at the grocery store, you're not thinking straight and you walk out with an orange. You didn't mean to not go through and like, pay for it. And you're like, oh, I'm just having a day. Maybe there's something going on in your life. This has never happened before. Another human might be like, I can tell based on how you are and the fact that you've been a customer here before. It's fine. Just come on back in and pay for it. I think they're worried about system just saying, like, seeing everything in black and white. You left the store with this, therefore these are the consequences, and not having that humanity give them a chance to explain this is what's going on. So that these are all very big concerns. But overall, I always am hesitant to say this is the one thing that everyone's getting wrong. I think it is so individual. But when I come across people who kind of put their arms up and they're not wanting to even consider the positive possibilities, for whatever reason, they have an idea in their head that this is going to be bad and they don't want to give it a chance and won't listen and won't reason. They don't even share sometimes why they don't like it. I might try to get it out of them, and the reason they give them, that doesn't make any sense. There's got to be something else here. And throughout my career, I've always been very tech focused and technology forward. And I've seen that type of, I don't know if it's a personality trait, but I've seen that throughout my career. And I've seen that resistance. If the resistance is based on fear and the fear is on something that they just don't know, unknown factor, then a lot of times you can talk, explain, and show, and then they can decide for themselves if they like this as a technology they want to utilize or know more about. But there are people who just don't want change, period. So
That's true.
I can't explain. I'm not a psychologist. I'm not able to sit down with them for like 2 hours straight and get to the bottom of it. Like, what happened to you growing up that you don't like this computer? But I do think that change is hard for a lot of people. Sometimes we forget that if we just stood still and did nothing, the world would still change around us, and that we're changing ourselves. What's happening internally, medically, biologically, we're never able to be completely still. So if there's a resistance there, then I think that's where a lot of misconceptions lie, is in people that just don't want it to happen. So then they shut out what's really happening. And I think what's happening is beautiful. If we can get more people that are excited to do something positive with it, we're going to be that much better.
Yeah. Just like with animals, having owned a dog, they don't like change either. They get stressed out. Everybody's creatures of habit, so I get where you're coming from. You mentioned something about people being worried about AI taking our jobs. You had a different take, and you told me you want AI to take your job. Can you double click into that?
Sure. So, I was a news anchor. I was getting up at 2 in the morning for the past 6 years. Before that, I was on a night shift, which meant if a basketball game was on, I may not get home till 2 in the morning. And before that, I was waking up at midnight for a morning shift. And it takes a toll. That's not a natural time to wake up. I loved being the first one to tell people what was going on in the world, but I did not like having to go to bed at 4 or 5 o'clock at night. It literally did not happen. I was getting maybe 4 hours of sleep a night on average. Some nights a lot less, some nights more. Weekends, I'd try to catch up there. But how great would it be if my AI could get up in the morning and do the morning show? And then I could get up and, as a human, go and do all the community events. Big thing for news media. That's what attracted me to being in the TV news industry. It's not just a public service, but you also have this community involvement. You go to events, you help different organizations that are struggling getting food to needy families. But it's hard sometimes when you've been up since 2 in the morning, you didn't get very good sleep for the past 6 years. It's like you can't do it all in a human body. And so it would be great for me to still do the news in my way, program myself as an AI to make that happen. And then me as a physical person can go do all the community outreach where I have to physically be there. And if I'm your favorite anchor, why not have it be me who tells you all the news of the day? If I'm that trusted source for you. And of course, wanting to have some programs in there, some things that my AI will never do, never say. I would want it to still adhere to journalistic ethics and make sure that the journalism is still top notch. But maybe that's what you get with my AI. My AI is the full journalism experience. And then me as a person can meet you when you come out to this event or that event. But yeah, go ahead and do that. Also, like a normal human being, I don't get sick very often, but when I do, it affects my voice. And it's not very fun to listen to an anchor who can barely talk. Like my voice might be an octave lower, and that's kind of cool, but it hurts to talk. So it would be really great if my AI takes over that day. So that's another idea I have of getting a chance to still be me, still, have that ownership over who I am and how I would do my journalism, but to get it to help me when I need the help too.
I share your sentiment. Part of why I resisted doing like this for so long is between running the company and then also being face to face, developing one on one relationships. I found it really hard to find the time. And I'm not a news anchor. My schedule is not nearly as brutal. But even so, I can relate to some of what you're saying. I would rather spend time being in person at an event, at a conference, than spending hours doing this. And like you, I'm experimenting with AI avatars, cloning my voice and leveraging that. If people come to me because they like talking to me, appreciate my weird sense of humor, this digital twin will hopefully still have that and they'll get more of it. But I get to spend time face to face with people versus trying to spend time in a room on YouTube all day.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And like you said, when you're running a company, you might have to get up early. You have to stay out late. If there's something that the AI can kind of go over and help you out with. I always said, I want to clone myself. I need four of me. If I could have four of me, one would constantly be sleeping, so the other three could just keep going. One would be working. One would be eating, because I love food.
And
One would just graze. This clone of me would just travel the world. But we would have a collective brain so that when the one was eating all these awesome meals, no matter which clone of me is doing it, we're all getting that same sensation. I should write a whole movie script or something based on that.
But some of that can be achieved as long as you're Instagramming your food. You can feed that as context and memory to your AI avatars. So when somebody asks that AI avatar what you had, I had this and that.
I'm talking about biological clone, which AI and biological cloning is very interesting.
Imagine cloning yourself to be in more places at once. Lindsey gets it. If you're thinking about digital twins, voice agents, or scalable customer touchpoints, we've built them. Impeccable turns vision into working product. Learn more at impeccable.com.
It's so fascinating because if there's something that I don't quite understand or it hasn't been something I've studied in the past, I like to get down those rabbit holes. I read recently Michael Crichton's book, Prey. I don't even know what year it came out, but Michael Crichton hasn't been with us for a very long time. And it was talking a lot about the biological intelligence, biological entities. And of course, it's a story of what could go wrong. I learned a lot from that, and they ended up being part of a summit that was focusing on biology and AI, which was perfect timing. I was trying to finish the book by the time that event went on. And there is a lot of questions about how AI and our DNA might intertwine, for example. There's a lot of concern as to what's going to happen with a very specific company that we all spit into tubes for. And where's that going to go? But also, what kind of data can you extract from that? Also, my question is going a couple steps further. What type of biological data might then lead to something else in the biological world that we wouldn't have gotten to without the help of AI figuring it out? Again, I like to reference some of these like Hollywood moments because Hollywood's been thinking about this for a very long time, way longer than most of us. And I always think back to Jurassic Park, one of my favorite movies ever, right? They're talking about all those billions of lines of data and code and DNA. And what do you do with it? Well, if we do this, we can create that in a very simplified term, like very simplified way. What kind of biological data might lead to other biological things? But it's AI that's putting all those little things together to say, hey, did you think of doing this? Because I can make it happen.
That movie has aged really well and is still one of my favorite movies.
It has, but I am noticing certain things now. When I was rewatching it the other day, I was like, "Oh, that's green screen. I never noticed that before." It was very fascinating, like, but it has held up incredibly well.
As you cover these stories, where do you see the biggest gap between the AI narrative that people are saying and then the reality on the ground?
It's so interesting because there's so many people that love to say it's overhyped. And then recently we had Eric Schmidt come out and say it's underhyped. I thought that was very brilliant to say because there's so many people saying the opposite. And then he explained why it's underhyped. And when it comes to journalism, it's like, well, what's the truth? The truth usually lies somewhere in the middle. I think the reality is that we have a lot of ideas about what AI can be used for. And we have a lot of companies that are going down that path. Some of them are going to be successful, but I think we sometimes forget that some of them are not going to be successful. We're going to head down a road and say, hey, maybe we can use it for this amazing medical breakthrough. And it may not lead to a breakthrough at all. Or maybe we, go down the road and we think it's going to help with something in the environment, but it ends up leading to not just environmental breakthrough, but it leads to a medical breakthrough. And, if you think about scientific studies, oh, we went and decided to focus on this particular focus of study, but in the course of this, we found out that if you take this, it cures this disease. So I think we might see some of that as well. I guess it's more of the big thing I think of is we still have a long way to go for people to learn the tools. We have some very brilliant minds that understand coding, that understand how AI works, but we have the vast majority of people saying, what do I need to know for my job, my family, for my life? And they don't know where to start, or they might have a tool and the tutorials are too technical. And so I think that collectively, we need to catch up with what the technology can do in order to realize its full potential.
As someone who communicates to the masses, do you have any thoughts around that? Because that is a big challenge to overcome.
Yeah, I've been looking up some of the stats, and there's all these projections about how many billions of dollars the AI education space is going to be. I believe that it's going to be an area that a lot of people will flock to. But when it comes to the employer space, there are a lot of companies that either are not able to or maybe not willing to give people the time to actually learn. So I have seen so many companies decide, hey, we're getting this whole system and it's AI. Have fun with it. Okay, what do I do with it? How does this work? This is confusing. Or fear, saying, I'm afraid to have it scan my emails because we deal with legal cases. We deal with HIPAA. How do I know I'm not going to get in trouble for using this? I've seen some companies say, hey, if you use AI, you will be in trouble. So there's this precedent then that's set that people are afraid to even use it for what they're allowed to use it for. But that's going to be something that we'll have to get over. I don't see any one company yet, one like educational resource yet that's like, that's the one. Instead, when I have conversations with people and they're saying, where do I start? I say, you have to know a little bit about what you might be interested in already, and then go toward that education outlet. If somebody really is prompting's my thing, okay, great. I can tell you XYZ. These three companies are great at teaching prompting. If someone says, hey, I really want to just get into robotics, okay, that's great. You can focus over here, or I would even suggest you might want to go to a college to focus on the robotics part. For someone who's like, I don't know where to start, that's why playing around with the tools is so important. There's backlash right now on the amount of energy that it uses. But if people don't play, they can't discover. And they need to discover what part of it they might be a good fit for. Especially if someone's concerned that the job they're in might be replaced, then they need to be able to figure out what part of their skill set is going to translate over to this new world. Or conversely, they might say, I'm sick of doing what I've been doing for the past years. I'd like to try something new. And there might be something that sparks their interest. And who knows, that might be the person that comes out with that amazing AI company that changes all of our lives for the better. So I'm very much on the side of encouraging people to play and to use it as a discovery tool for yourself. Because you're doing great with like the mid journey and the images and video, but there might be some people that get into those and they're like, I don't see why this is fun at all. This is a task for me.
Yeah.
But then they might get in and say like, oh, I just love going through spreadsheets and data analytics. Like, let me take a mountain of data and find the one thing that threads all this together. And then that tells me something about, I keep going back to like the medical world because that's going to touch so many of us. There's all these examples of what we could end up doing with it. And I really think time's going to tell for each one of us. But I think the wrong thing to do is resist it altogether.
I agree. A lot of times it's not being able to understand the possibilities and also seeing the examples of how AI might apply to me. Like with ChatGPT, it's like, well, it's great at content writing, but I don't write content. How does this apply to me? But if you look at spreadsheets all day now, there's AI where you can just talk to spreadsheets, or you don't even have to write SQL anymore to get to the data. You can just tell it to present it to me in a certain way, so you don't need to wrestle with Tableau or something like that anymore. So I think it's showcasing examples of how AI could be used and making it relevant to them.
Relevancy is so important. I think sometimes we have this image of who we want to be, and then there's who we are, and then there's this bridge in between. Like if I want to be this other kind of person, but I'm this right now, how do I get there? Or sometimes just recognizing what we're already good at. We take for granted what we're already good at because we assume that if it's now become easy for us, that it doesn't hold value, or oh, it must be easy for everybody as well. You just mentioned content writing. And for me, sometimes I'm like, oh gosh, anyone can write content now. What's my place in the world? I think that quite a bit. I have to remind myself, just because I find it easy doesn't mean that other people even enjoy doing it.
I can totally relate. For my own business, everybody's been writing more content. And I can tell you that it's like pulling teeth with me to get me to write. And I find like this is much easier. I can make content this way. This feels more natural to me. It's a conversation I'm having with a friend versus sitting in a blank screen, trying to like put down my thoughts and then organize it. It's like, oh my God, this is such a chore. We've already been talking before we've started the interview for a long time. And there's certain things, like you said, certain people enjoy certain things. And with AI, maybe they don't have to do as much of what they don't enjoy and go find something else and adapt. So you cover AI. What do you feel is not getting enough coverage with AI? Where would you want to shine a light?
I still don't think we're doing enough in the medical field. A lot of people that I talk to when I bring up AI and medical or health, they tell me, oh, yeah, last time I went to the doctor, I was given an AI summary on my way out of what we discussed. Like, wow, that's really neat. Or they were sitting there and they said, the doctor was really focused on our conversation. Usually they're typing away, but instead they had their phone out and they just recorded the conversation. And that happened to me at one of the last doctor's appointment I had. The doctor came in and said, is it okay if I record? And I'm like, oh, well, I took a moment and I said, you can record the medical part, but I also love this doctor and I like to chat with her too about life stuff. But we'll turn it off for the life stuff. So we did that. And I felt comfortable with that. I think in the future, I may not even think about it or even care about it. Or you might sign a waiver before you go in. They won't even bring it up. It just might all be recorded. And for those who are, listening or watching the podcast and they haven't used AI note taking software just yet, they may not realize what the capabilities are. And what I'm most impressed with is the actionable items. A lot of these transcription programs, me as a journalist, I've had to use a lot of these transcription programs. I'm just wanting a transcript, but now it's not only giving me a summary, but it'll give me an actionable item area. And that has been so important to me, because if I'm in an in-depth conversation with someone and we're supposed to do something, sometimes I get done with the conversation. I'm like, that was so fun. I'm so glad. It was so great to catch up with them. And I move on, forgetting, yeah, I told them I would XYZ. So that summary is important, because it's like, you talked about this and this, and you are supposed to send them XYZ. And there's so many different note-taking options. I right now subscribe to two. And the one I've been using for many years, because it's how I do a lot of the transcription. And as a journalist, I've hand transcribed beta tapes. I used to be an intern at Nightline with Ted Koppel. I have hand transcribed mini Ted Koppel interview. So I put in all the hours I need to. I don't want to do it anymore. So I have the one that I really use for that. But there's a second program that I started to integrate with my Zoom calls. And honestly, for I don't know how long, I didn't know that it automatically added itself. I had no idea that when I got on these calls, that AI was my AI. It took me some time, because I sign up for things and I'm like, I'll check this out later, but I'll sign up today and then I'll put a little to do. Completely didn't know that was mine. I didn't realize I had taken that next step, I guess. But what's so interesting about this one is that it was reading my facial expressions and whoever I was talking to's facial expressions. And it's giving me area where it's like the sentiment was negative here and positive here, and it was very fascinating. All these different, like the charisma and or I don't know if it was charisma, it was something similar to that. And I've broken down in all these different categories. I'm like, first of all, I did not do enough homework on this one. I had no idea it was using any type of facial recognition. And I've always been a little iffy on that. But to be honest, I'm loving this tool. I don't go back very often, but on the ones where it's like, oh yeah, there's something actionable, I want to take a look and see what it says, I do scan just to see, like, were there any moments where that person was like not happy with what we were talking about? And overall, everything's been super on the positive side. But you and I were talking about scams at the beginning of this. It will interpret something like that as being the conversation turned negative, just because the topic was more of a negative topic. But it also has like a coaching area, which I'm in communications, I'm pretty good at talking to people. But if somebody and people ask me all the time, how do you get better at interviews? How do you get better at talking to people? It's really with practice, and it's with watching yourself back. But with AI now, where they can coach you or give you tips. So someone who wants to improve in these areas can have their own AI coach. And it is hard for people to reach out to someone for media training or for interview training, because they might be too shy to even make the call. So this is a really great place to start of how can you get better at communication, and you can have AI like do an assessment. I always say practice the family member. If you still have your mom in your life, practice with your mom. If you have a sibling or a friend who's willing to go through it with you, it really does help. And if you're like, oh, I don't know, that sounds so cliche. When I was getting into the business and I was wanting to get better at doing live reports during a breaking news situation, specifically with a helicopter, where you have to narrate over what the helicopter's seeing, I would put on a police chase out of LA, turn the volume down, call my mom. I said, Mom, we got to practice. There's a police chase going on. She said, okay. And I would talk my mom's ear off sometime for an hour and a half, being like, so it's making a right on Ventura Boulevard right now, and just going through it. And it seems so silly, but it made me better. I'm a better communicator for doing it.
I echo your sentiment with practice, and then having that AI, if you're self-conscious, instead of having a person, having AI judge you is low stakes and an embarrassment quotient. So to that point, I recently started using an AI sales coach, adding to my meetings. I have two AI bots. One is note taking. I used to take copious notes. I'm pretty good at taking notes, but then you hear this clackety clack, and I feel I'm not as engaged because I'm taking copious notes. Now I'm fully engaged because the AI note taker takes way better notes than me. And then to your point, the action items, but I can also chat with the transcription. So I can just, hey, what were the key things that informed a scope or proposal that I can pull out? That's the note taker piece. But then the sales coach, as someone who is an individual contributor who ended up owning a company and having to do sales. I've never been professionally or formally trained in sales at all. So other than reading some books and stuff, then eventually I did get an executive coach, which is very expensive. And for many people, that's not a realistic solution. But for the cost of $30 a month on every sales call, I have this AI coach. And then after the call, they send me a ranking. You did this, you jumped too quickly into solutioning, didn't ask enough questions. This is great for someone who
Wow.
is, not necessarily feels very self-conscious about whether their sales skills are up to par. It really has improved my abilities to and add more confidence to my sales calls.
I'm fascinated by that. I just really am because we're all trying to get better at our craft. And I'm so interested just to hear a little bit more about what you're learning with the sales coach and how it looks. Is it giving you a bullet pointed list, or is there a graph? Like, what does it look like when you get that feedback?
It's a scoring on various categories. I get it right after the transcription is transcribes and then it analyzes. What's really cool, I'll just promote it. The company's called Self Actualize. It's a startup. I used to have coaches, but you meet them once a month and they get expensive, and at some point you're like, okay, this is good enough, I'll stop spending the money. They're trying to democratize executive coaching, and what they've done is they partnered with real life coaches. Sometimes they're personalities. So in this instance, Jeffrey Gitomer, who's famous for his little red book of selling, I do have his book somewhere here. So I knew the author, and he has lent his knowledge base through all his books to become this AI virtual coach. What's really cool is I probably cannot afford a Jeffrey Gitomer to be my personal sales coach after every sales call, but for the price of a few coffees, I can, after every call, this guy can coach me. What I like about it is they have several coaches and for different types of people. It's like for me, I wanted hard truth. Just tell it to me raw. If I suck, tell me I sucked. If I'm good, there's other coaches where they'll be more supportive and nurturing. Whereas for me, I don't want any of that. Just tell me what I did wrong. How do I improve? Don't coddle me. And
Yep. I'll too. Like with my scripts, I'd take it to like an executive producer and I'm like, if you got to put a red X through the whole thing, do it. And I've had them do that and like start over. Yeah. That's
yeah.
fascinating. Wow.
And that way, when I get a high score, and I was like, wow, I did really good at this call. But if it's always high, then I'm like, oh, did I really do good? I digress. So that's just one example of democratizing access to something that may be out of reach for certain people right before.
Wow. No, I'm very intrigued. I'm wondering what other AI, agents you can add to the Zoom to make it even better. I almost need one to be like, hey, you only got 3 more minutes with this person. Like it'll tell you if you're up, I have one of the paid Zooms now, so it no longer says like your 40 minutes is coming up.
Not quite directly during the Zoom, but we there's these deep research agents. Google Gemini and even OpenAI's ChatGPT has really good deep research now, where you can research a person. To your point, like I've leveraged this tool to research you prior to our meeting and call. But when I have sales calls where people book from my Calendly and I don't know who they are, I have these research tools. Look them up on LinkedIn, look up their company, give me the basics. These are stuff that would take my time or my assistant's time. And now they're semi automatically done whenever somebody books a call. There's levels of deep research. If it's like a really big client and this is a really important meeting, I'll spend the extra tokens to do more deeper research and stuff like that.
Have you ever had where somebody signs up through your Calendly and you're like, the research comes back and you're like, I don't think I would have talked to this person?
Sometimes it's like they're just not very internet present and you have very little information. I've not quite had one where it's like, oh, bad and rings a bell. But usually the opposite, where there's not much data to go on, right? I talked to a CMO at an actual event, and it was a CMO of a known company. You mentioned, if I mentioned the company, you would recognize them, but he has absolutely no, and this is for a consumer product, he is not on anywhere. He's just impossible to find.
but we connected. Now he has his phone number. I was like, wow, I couldn't find you on LinkedIn. Like, he is invisible, and I wouldn't have found him. That's strange. How do you explain AI to friends and family when they're curious?
Usually, when they're asking me about it, they're using me as like a subject matter expert and they want to know something very specific. And it's because of either a program they're using or because there's some headline that came out. And I always try to listen first, especially when it comes to my family. I've been around them long enough to know like there's something specific they want to know. And I wait for them to peel the onion enough for me to be like, okay, this is what you're getting at. And then we go from there. For the most part, even if my family has resistance, they're usually pretty open to trying something new when I tell them how it really works.
How has AI changed you personally?
I always talk about augmented reality because that made a big splash in around 2008, 2009-ish. I was trying to put those stories on air at the time. And it was hard. There was a lot of resistance. There were people that were like, okay, you can do a story on it. Like, but no, this is huge. Like, we need to do multiple stories and show how it works and all these things. And so one thing led to another. I focused more on social media for a while. But then as soon as this huge new AI wave began, I felt that same excitement that I felt back when augmented reality was coming out. And I was like, you know what? This time I really want to make it stick. So it's changed my life because it's really changed my profession. I went from focusing, and I'm still doing online scams, things like that, but I really went from focusing more on breaking news to focusing more on AI and technology. I'm really proud of the fact that I became the first local TV news anchor in the country to have AI as my official beat, and I'm running with it. Thanks to AI and technology, I can focus on some of the positive sides of news right now.
As we wrap up, I want to thank you so much for your time. I'm so glad we met at a conference. Speaking of real life, face to face events,
Yes.
had I been spending too much time in this office basement stuff, I wouldn't have met you. Being able to do real life events, meeting face to face, I appreciate that. For folks listening, Lindsey is available for sponsorships and partnerships, and she's also doing keynotes and workshops. And where can people find you?
The easiest thing to do is just search for my name, Lindsey, Lindsey, Mastis, Mastis. And you can find my website, which is just myname.com, and on YouTube, and then stick my name in there, and I should be the first to pop up. I'm the only Lindsey Mastis in the world that I know of. So there's just one of me, and you should be able to find me pretty quickly. And I want to thank you, Pek, so much for having me on. It's such a pleasure to talk tech with you. And for people probably have no idea how much tech we talked about before the podcast started. Like, we could talk all day, all night. And it's just so fun to see and know someone else who's as excited as I am about these tools.
I'm so glad we got to geek out. I'll put all those resources in the show notes for listeners so it's easy. Again, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Pek.
If today's conversation sparked new ideas about AI, voice interfaces, or digital trust, Impekable can help. We're a 10-year Twilio partner and Google Cloud experts who've launched everything from AI-powered chat and voice agents to real-time fraud detection tools. Head to impeccable.com or hit the link in the description to connect with us.